Imagine a boxing match so devastating that scientists actually used its final scene to make people cry in labs. That's not an exaggeration, that's the champ. We'll walk through the champ, Brian's song, $1 Million Baby, Remember the Titans, and bang the drum slowly. 5 moments that make even the toughest men reach for a tissue. Hit subscribe, and let's dive straight in. Because here's the real question: why do sports films hit you harder than almost any other genre? The answer starts with one father-son story that turned into the gold standard of sadness itself. Of all the moments in movie history, researchers kept returning to the ending of The Champ. What looked like a boxing story became a case study in grief, so raw that psychologists used it to measure sadness in labs. The plot is simple. Billy Flynn, a washed-up fighter played by Jon Voight, is holding on to the one thing that keeps him going: his son. Every fight isn't about belts or money. It's about proving he's still worthy of his child's love. That's what drew psychologists in. In the 1990s, researchers Robert Levinson and James Gross tested hundreds of film clips to see which triggered the strongest emotions. Out of all of them, the final scene of The Champ ranked near the top, what one study called the gold standard of cinematic sadness. The climax strips away the usual underdog triumph. Billy collapses after the fight, and the audience is pulled into silence as his son begs him to wake up. No speeches, no score, just a child refusing to accept that his hero is gone. What makes it brutal isn't boxing, it's the relationship. You don't need to know the sport to feel the devastation of a child losing a parent. Studies even found the effect crossed cultures and generations, hitting older audiences harder as their own life experience deepened the loss. Director Franco Zeffirelli kept the fight short because the point wasn't punches, it was aftermath. In just a few minutes, the film compressed grief into something universal and precise, the kind of scene that elicits the same reaction every time. That's why The Champ endures. It isn't manipulative melodrama, it's empathy distilled. A sports movie turned into a laboratory tool, proof that the genre can bottle human vulnerability in its purest form. Audiences didn't just see tragedy, they recognized a truth. Sometimes the fight isn't about glory, it's about the fear of losing the person who defines your world. And that's why this clip still lives on in classrooms, studies, and late-night reruns alike. Brian's song premiered in 1971 and became a cultural touchstone for its portrayal of friendship across racial lines. At its center were Chicago Bears running backs Gale Sayers and Brian Piccolo, teammates bound by competition, circumstance, and, ultimately, loss. On the surface, they were rivals fighting for playing time, one destined for stardom, the other still proving his worth. But the film carried more weight because of its timing. Just 7 years after the Civil Rights Act, it showed two men becoming the first interracial roommates in the NFL.
We'd like you and Brian Piccolo to room together.
You had me worried. I thought it was something really.
This is something really. Man, you're talking about a white man and a black man rooming together on a team that's never been done before.
A small detail on paper became revolutionary on screen. Instead of focusing on touchdowns, the story finds meaning in late-night talks, training sessions, and jokes. Those quiet moments transform them from competitors into close friends who rely on one another. Brian's humor softens Sayers' stoicism, while Sayers' strength steadies him as his health declines. The reversal is the heart of the film. Sayers, the star, becomes caretaker. Piccolo, the underdog, becomes the one in need. Their rivalry dissolves into vulnerability, something rarely shown between men in sports films of that era. The most enduring moment comes when Sayers accepts football's highest award for courage. He redirects the honor to Piccolo, making clear that any bravery he had was shared with his friend. It was a public act of love that challenged the stoicism audiences expected from athletes. For viewers, the film wasn't about football at all. It asked what friendship looks like when tested by illness and the certainty of loss. Hospital visits, silences, and small gestures hit harder than any play on the field. Rivalries fade. Records fade. But staying with someone in their weakest moment, that's the real measure of devotion. Brian's song became shorthand for male tenderness in a generation raised on toughness. Its lesson was simple, but devastating. Bravery isn't only about facing opponents. It's about showing up when someone you love is slipping away. If Brian's song showed the tenderness of friendship, remember the Titans captured the heartbreak of brotherhood forged under fire. At its heart was the real-life bond between linebacker Gary Bertier and defensive end Julius Campbell, two men forced to bridge a racial divide in 1971 Virginia. The movie builds their relationship slowly through clashes, insults, and drills that feel endless. What begins as animosity bends into respect, then loyalty. By the time they stand side by side, their friendship embodies the promise the team was fighting for, that unity can be stronger than prejudice. But then the blow lands. After leading the Titans to victory, Gary is paralyzed in a car accident. The locker room joy vanishes in an instant. What hits hardest isn't just the crash, it's the way his teammates, and especially Julius, refuse to let his spirit fade. In the hospital, the line,
"Are you blind? Don't you see the family resemblance? It's my brother."
turns what could have been a sports subplot into one of cinema's rawest declarations of love and loss. What makes the moment linger is that Gary doesn't die, not then. He lives, but forever changed, and the team must carry his absence on the field. For audiences, the grief isn't only about mortality. It's about watching potential cut short, dreams reshaped, and a bond tested by the cruelest twist of fate. Remember, the Titans reminded viewers that the saddest sports stories aren't only about final breaths. They're about the fractures life can leave behind, even in survival. Gary's accident is that fracture, and the image of Julius holding his hand is the scar the film leaves behind. Million Dollar Baby looks like a boxing drama, but it unfolds as a meditation on vulnerability, sacrifice, and what mercy really costs. At its center is Maggie Fitzgerald, who arrives at Frankie Dunn's gym with nothing but determination. She's older than most rookies, has no reputation, and little chance. But her relentlessness draws in Frankie, an aging trainer weighed down by regret. Their relationship begins in resistance, but hardens into trust, slowly shifting into something closer to a father-daughter bond. Then comes the break. Just as Maggie reaches the height of her rise, one brutal injury changes everything. In seconds, she shifts from contender to patient, from fighter to someone fully dependent on others. The story pivots from ambition to fragility, forcing Frankie into a decision no strategy can solve. This is where the film's real depth emerges. Boxing becomes metaphor, every jab a symbol of life's constant risks. Frankie teaching defense isn't just ring strategy, it's his way of shielding someone he loves from a world he can't control. When Maggie's body fails, the question shifts, can protection also mean letting go? The ending doesn't soften. Maggie pleads for release, pulling Frankie into the realm of mercy killing and euthanasia. Some viewers saw it as an act of compassion, others as cowardice. That divide is what gives the film its haunting power. Eastwood directs with restraint. Muted colors, sparse score, silences heavier than dialogue. Nothing distracts from the moral standoff between mentor and student, father and daughter. By the final act, it feels less like two characters than one shared heart facing an impossible choice. Years later, the debate still lingers. Was Frankie right? Was it love or surrender? Million Dollar Baby refuses tidy answers. It endures because it reframes sacrifice not as defeat, but as one last act of care when love collides with mortality. Not every heartbreaking sports film ends with a roaring crowd or a last-second shot. Some unravel in quieter spaces, like a dugout, where teammates watch a friend fading away one game at a time. That's the power of Bang the Drum Slowly. At its center is Bruce Pearson, a catcher diagnosed with terminal illness, played with raw fragility by a young Robert De Niro. The story doesn't give him a miracle comeback. Instead, it shows how an ordinary ballplayer, often ridiculed and overlooked, slowly earns the respect of teammates who realize too late what they're losing. The emotional anchor comes from Henry Wiggin, the star pitcher who chooses loyalty over reputation. Henry hides Bruce's illness from management, protects him from cruelty in the locker room, and quietly becomes his closest ally. Their bond shifts the film from a sports drama into something closer to a meditation on dignity. The games matter less than the act of standing beside someone as their strength slips away. The most devastating moments aren't even on the field. They're in the small gestures, teammates carrying Bruce through road trips, his weary smile in the dugout, the silence that falls when his absence can't be ignored. When the team finally learns the truth, their regret hits as hard as the diagnosis itself. What makes Bang the Drum slowly linger is its refusal to glamorize loss. Bruce doesn't go out in glory, he fades. And the film asks you to sit with that reality, to measure love not in championships, but in the willingness to walk beside someone on their last stretch. For many, it's less a baseball story than a mirror of life's hardest truth: the game always ends, but how you treat people before the final out is what lasts. Conclusion is simple. Across these 5 films, sports is only the frame. The real engine is empathy, theme, character, and sacrifice turn competition into a way to make you feel another person's pain. What these stories measure isn't wins, but what you carry and what you lose: love, loyalty, and the weight of letting go. Which scene broke you the most? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear. In the end, these movies don't ask how hard you hit, they ask who you'd stand by when the bell rings.